Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I've found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at shanajamescoaching.com/3ways. That's shanajamescoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shana James, and this is our 100th episode. So thank you for being with us, and I feel really grateful for you listening because without you, we don't have a podcast. And today is going to be a kind of a different episode where my friend and colleague Michael Welp is going to turn the tables and ask me some questions because you may not have heard about the origins of Man Alive or why I do this. And I think it's important to resurface that information so that you really have a context for what this is and you know why it's happening in the world. So thank you, Michael, for volunteering for this, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Thank you. It's sweet to be here with you. And wow, I'm totally amazed, Shana, that you've done 100 episodes in 2 years. That's like, what does it feel like to know you've done 50 a year? That's like one every week.
It's funny. I mean, it doesn't really feel like anything, to be totally honest. I've been sitting with that like, oh, here we are now at 100 episodes. And I just, it's almost like, I just love doing them. So when I'm doing an episode, I feel like I'm really in the moment with it. And I think part of what I love about it is, and I was actually talking to a man the other day who reached out from seeing me on Facebook, and it felt right for me to say, you know what, I think, going and checking out the podcast episodes is going to be the greatest first step for you, because you're going to get to hear topics, like relationship, leadership, health, sensuality, money. Like my vision for Man Alive has really been to bring these topics to men, for men who are wanting to grow and wanting to feel fully alive, right? To not settle in certain aspects of your life or not feel like you're dying inside. To have the experts and the resources, and in a way where you don't have to necessarily even be visible, right? You don't have to go out and put yourself out there. It's like an easy first step, I think.
Yeah, it feels to me like this massive gift of resource, of insights, and I have to tell you, Shana, your voice is just really soothing. I love hearing your voice. It's lively, and when you said fully alive, I'm like, yeah, that's part of your voice. Voice.
Thank you. That's been interesting too. I mean, in some ways, the origin of Man Alive came also from this idea of keeping men alive, and a kind of a download I had a couple years ago around that there's some way I'm supposed to support decreasing the rate of suicide for men. And I don't tend to work with men who are on the brink of that. I'm open to it, but I haven't quite gone there. But For me, it's about more of a culture change, right? Like what will it take to shift a culture such that men don't feel so isolated and that they can't share their struggles or their vulnerability, right? Without being
Mhm.
blamed or bashed or seen as weak, or all the ways that I think we hold men in our culture that, we're working to change. But we've seen in the past couple of years, even with the Me Too movement, right? It's like there's a
Mhm.
lot of bashing and a lot of blaming. And so I want to be part of a culture change that welcomes men's vulnerability and actually realizes that it's necessary, um,
Yeah.
for us to welcome that and hold that and help men find ways to express that and be understood in that. Otherwise, I think we're all in danger.
Yes, I hear you as a welcoming beacon, kind of like come on out of the darkness or out of the shadow or out of hiding in ourselves
Mhm.
to talk about what's keeping us from being alive or
Yep.
fully alive, and what's potentially, weighting us down so much for some of us that it's
Mhm.
suicidal, or
Mhm.
all the addictions that are happening and stuff. So I'm curious, Jana, was there a special moment? Was there, you said download,
Yeah.
it was a download a few years ago. Was it like what was the moment like, or what was the dawning like when you said, I want to do this?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even an I want to do this. It was I was sitting in a workshop where someone said, what are you committed to? And I was pretty blank for a minute or so. I just didn't even, I was like, I guess I've got nothing on this one. I'm not sure. And then suddenly I was hit. It literally felt like someone punched me in the stomach, and out of my mouth came, I'm here to reduce the rate of suicide for men. And then I just sobbed for an hour and I could barely speak. And, it was one of those like, this is a mission that's bigger than me. And it's a
Mm,
mission I don't feel like I've fully stepped into yet either. And the podcast, I mean, it's interesting when I think about the podcast, it feels like a first step. And I've often felt like a bridge, even from the days back in doing a lot more the Authentic Man program and helping men have better relationships with women. It was like we were often a bridge for men or people who were out in the general culture and didn't have a sense of deeper or more authentic relating and connection and what was possible.
mhm,
And then I've also felt like a bridge between men and women. I think part of why I love working with men is because they get to feel more alive. And part of why I love working with men is because I love that it makes men more available, for loving relationships with women when they're
mhm, mhm.
heterosexual. And yeah, so I like being that bridge, and I like being an ally for men and understanding. Like there's something in me that really, I feel like I really understand men in a certain way where I'm not judging
Mm,
your desires. I'm not judging something as too much or too shallow or, too sexual or whatever it may be.
mm,
It's like, oh, I just like to really get in there and understand, why is that important to you? Right? Why does that matter? And what are you trying to get here or co-create here? And I
yeah.
think I think men do feel that, like you said, with my voice, there's something where men feel safe
Mhm,
to start to think about those things and actually,
mm,
beyond the culture and the expectations of family and all of that, like, wow, what really makes me alive?
mm. Wow. I'm just struck by that moment where you were sobbing for a half an hour when you voiced that
Hmm.
desire and that clarity of intent. That must have been just like, oh my gosh, I found it. I found the.
Well, I felt more terrified, to be totally honest.
Ah,
I didn't feel like, wow, I found it. I felt
oh
like,
shit. Yeah.
seriously, me, like little me.
Ah,
Um,
huh.
and I hadn't actually had an experience of a man in my life committing suicide until after
Mm,
that moment.
mm,
Um,
mm,
so that was interesting too. That it was, again, it was like, why me? But I actually do have many friends whose brothers or fathers or
mhm,
even a friend whose sister's husband committed suicide. Like, I know of it and it's been around, but I also been thinking back to one of the first moments in the Authentic Man program where after a weekend where we as women were there to give
Mm,
men loving and honest feedback, a man said, I've been struggling. I've been going through a divorce. I am raising a child. I've been so overwhelmed. I didn't even know if I wanted to keep living.
yeah.
And you brought me back, right? You, me,
Mm,
we, not just me, but all of the women and the men there, like you brought me back to life.
mm,
And I think that's the root of the man alive piece, and that the piece
yeah.
around suicide, you know?
Yeah. It kind of came into my mind as a tagline when you said, bringing men back to life,
Yes.
with all the pressures and stuff that we have. And,
Yeah. And this may sound weird, but I have this sense that, like, if I was alive in an ancient time, that I would be one of those women who, when men came back from war,
mm,
who like
oh,
helped reintegrate them and
mm,
loved them and held them. And, you know, in those days, there was something, um, there was a spiritual aspect, there was a sexual aspect. Like, I don't do sexual work, but I do that kind of loving intimacy that a lot of men, when I work with them, they're like, wow, I've never been appreciated in this way. I've never been
mhm,
understood in this way. I've never actually, I was working with a man the other day who we were working on receiving,
mm,
because I find this with a lot of men I work with. He's such a giver, right? Like, you're another man I know. You're such a giver. You're so
mhm,
generous and incredible with other people and with women. And
mhm,
helping men learn to actually receive that too
mhm.
feels
Yeah.
so important for me, because otherwise it's kind of like that hungry ghost thing where you might be walking around in the world where there's the potential for feeling nourished and feeling awakened and alive and connected and having, you know, passion. But if you can't receive it, then what good is that?
Hmm. No, totally. I mean, and when you said that phrase, even in the old war times of welcoming them back and holding them and loving them, you said you were worried about it feeling weird, but it feels right on to me for what
Yeah.
you do. It's like that's who you are. It's like, and that degree of the muscle that you have around appreciation, which presence and appreciation is kind of back to that hologram model from the authentic man world, is
Mm-hmm.
sort of like in the DNA of you.
Mm,
And
thank you. Yeah, and these days, right, it's not war per se, but it is,
mhm,
I'm going out as a man to take care of my family and to take care of my home and to take care of my community and to have a powerful impact on the world. And, you know, I think if I had my way, and I actually think this is already happening, but I'd love to do it even more. It's like, for me to get to love and support the men in the world who are having a positive impact, whether that's on their community. It might be a teacher, it might be, you know, someone who's doing a social impact business, it might be a father. Like, there's no specific um, pattern or, you know, career or something like that. But it's like, for me to get to care for the ones who are caring for others and the world,
mhm,
and help men
mhm,
have more of an impact or more of a connection with their children, you know, while at
mhm,
the same time not losing themselves, not having to give up what's important to them and what's meaningful for them, and
mhm.
to have that feeling of aliveness, right? That feels like a deep mission for me.
Mm, yeah, it's like where's the part of our soul that feeds ourselves, and where do we refine that? It's like you're helping us come back home to ourselves.
Yeah. And I think as I get older, I'm thinking about more of the men I'm working with are getting older.
Mm,
And there's something in particular I'm really amazed with right now about midlife and the
mm,
idea of a midlife crisis
mhm,
and helping it not be a crisis, right? And
mhm,
there are some, kind of cheesy, silly word like a midlife transition or a midlife opportunity or whatever, whatever.
Right.
It's kind
Or
of
a
silly.
bloom, midlife blooming.
Right, right. All these kind of funny
Great
names.
for,
But
yeah.
there's something I've been seeing and working with men recently where it's like at midlife, there is the opportunity to really start to take stock and see, okay, if my life is over in the next year or 10 years or even 30 years, like what do I want to have experienced, and who do I want to have touched? And is my
Mhm,
child
mhm,
leaving for school in X number of years, and what do I want to model for them? Or
mhm.
what do I want to have in my intimate partnership that I've been afraid of asking for or afraid
Yeah.
of,
Mm,
speaking to? So I'm loving the whole midlife piece. There's
mm,
fire there.
mm. So if you could like wave a magic wand for these men in that period, I mean, what would you wish upon them?
Mm. I think what I would wish upon them, what I would want for them is to feel the confidence and the courage to get more honest
Mm,
with themselves and with the people in their lives, to
mm,
be able to start asking for what they want and need instead of thinking asking is weak, or I should just settle for what I have and that would be enough.
mhm.
um,
Yeah.
I want there's a kind of, this feels hard to speak to sometimes, there's a kind of intimacy I think I've experienced in my life, and I imagine you have too because we've done some of the same work,
Mhm,
where I can kind of bare my soul and the things I think would be seen as horrible, or I'd be rejected for them, or someone would leave me. And I have the kind of connections in my life now where that doesn't happen. It actually brings us closer.
mhm,
And I see men
mm,
often holding up these masks or these, personas of I've got it together and I've got to be the one to be the rock and I can't let down my guard or I can't show my vulnerability. And what I want for men is to start recognizing and actually practicing the deeper sharing, where
mm,
they get to be held and loved and understood for who they are, and they don't have to give up the role of being protector or supporter or lover in those ways, but that both get to happen, that all of that gets to happen.
yeah. Like we could.
And
Mm,
I was just
mhm,
thinking, sorry, and it's like I also see that makes men more powerful
mhm,
in the world, in their business, and in the impact they want to have.
mm. Yeah. Are there any stories that come to mind for you of a particular times where you've helped men sort of come home to themselves in this way, or soften as a way to actually paradoxically become stronger?
Mm. Yeah, there's a man I worked with a couple years ago, and it was interesting because he was doing really well in business, and he was kind of, he was recognized as a go-getter, and he was getting promotions, and somehow women were just seeing him as a friend. And
Mm-hmm.
it was weird. Everyone around him was like, I don't understand, you're so amazing, why are you not in a relationship? And he was really stuck in that way. And as we were working together, there was a moment I remember where he kind of glossed over something or smiled or laughed something off, and I welled up with tears and said, like, wait a minute, that whatever you just shared, like, that doesn't seem congruent, right? Whatever you said moved me to tears, and you're there kind of laughing or moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And when we slowed it down and he actually stopped and got vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
something shifted in him. And I mean, the surface layer that almost feels like candy in a way is women started being way more attracted to him,
Mm-hmm.
and almost throwing themselves at him. Like, it was like he touched into this place in himself where he became more alive and more available, and he wasn't on the surface of things, and women feel that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um and he started getting even more work opportunities. But the deeper piece for me feels like, God, he got to put down the load, right? It's like carrying the world on his shoulders and thinking, I can't let anyone in or let anyone hold that with me. And I remember the day when he said, Sheena, I'm doing less than ever. And women are feeling, women are wanting me more than ever. It wasn't in an arrogant way. It was just in a, like, he was amazed. Like, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm not posturing. I'm not, telling stories. I don't have to know the right thing to say. I'm just here.
Right.
And I remember the day when he was like, I'm engaged to this amazing woman and she loves me for who I am. And she loves my vulnerable heart and she loves my strength. And, I want that for men.
That's awesome. You're making me want to go back and do more coaching with you.
Whenever you're ready.
I got another question too. This is like, how has all of this intense work with men in the podcast over the last 2 years, but all the coaching alongside of it, how has that changed you? Or how has it healed a part of you, if that's if you've been touched in a way that's changed you or impacted you? Sometimes people are givers and they end up receiving as much or more than
Right. I mean, one of the things that it's like I have this sense that I get to love men for a living, and I say that with amazement. Yeah, because to me, every time I get down to like, what am I here for? What do I want to do? It's like, I just want to love people. That's when I feel most alive, And so I feel like I get to be in my heart and in my soul doing this work. But the other thing that maybe is a little more tangible is I've started to realize that it's okay to challenge men and not just love them in a way that's like soft and heartfelt. I mean, that just is me. So it's a foundation of what I do, but that I can also invite men into something bigger and bolder and really say when I'm not feeling that. And I think it's helped me. It's helped me grow up in a way. Like, I feel like more of an adult and more of a woman rather than I'm a little girl who thinks that men can't rise to the challenge or won't rise to the challenge. Like, I have my own wounding from my past, and working with men all these years really woke me up to see that every man I've met has vulnerability and a tender heart underneath whatever he's putting out on the surface. And I think it's allowed me to feel, again, like I work with men, like my own strength and my own tenderness at the same time. And to also, another gift I've received is seeing how on my intuition is, that I used to feel like I was crazy. Like, I would feel these parts of people but think like, well, maybe that doesn't really matter, or who am I to say that? But now I can see how much, what seems invisible to other people that I can see is in service of their higher good. So that's definitely served me to feel like then I get to give that more. I feel more free to give that in the world.
Which is really kind of the gift you're giving men too, which is to help them trust themselves, pay attention to what really matters in their life and what's really important. Like you said, who's important to touch, who's important to connect with, and trusting their intuition. And you're kind of getting that back yourself as a process part of that.
Right. Which to me speaks to that way that we're not really separate, right? There's a way that we think in some ways men and women are so different, and we are, right? There's a lot of ways that we're different, or we view the world differently, enculturated differently. But when I also think about like one of my framings of shared reality, right? Like, we've all been little, we've all been teased, we've all um, peed in our pants, like all these things that have happened, right? We're all, most of us are struggling, right, with, or we all wanted someone when we were younger or even more recently who didn't want us back. And we're all going
Mhm.
to die, and we've all
Yeah.
experienced illness and loss and grief. And I think the older I get, the more I realize, wow, we can really connect there instead of in these surface ways
Yeah.
that feel
That,
kind of empty or
mm,
meaningless.
that universal vulnerability of just kind of heart to heart, soul to soul.
Yeah.
And I also heard in your reflections of your own changes, a willingness to challenge more
Mm-hmm.
that just naturally flows from that loving place. And
Mm-hmm.
somebody once actually told me, I had because I do similar. I get to love men for a living and
Yeah.
the
I
work,
love
and
that
it's
you
like,
see that.
um, and we used to say that we talk about the support challenge polarity. And a
Mm.
man I was working with who was Jewish, he said, I think it's a Christian definition of touching people through love is just pure support, but a Jewish definition of love to him was like, no, you support and you challenge,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like woven together. And that sounds like a bit where you've gone to.
Yeah. And there's a way that I sometimes talk about it with women when I'm working with women too, where it's like, it's really different to see a man at his best or what you can see as his best and call him into it versus to
Mm,
shame or blame or attack him for not being there. That doesn't have the impact for most of us as women that
mm-hmm.
we wanted to have or that we're trying to get to.
Right, which is, and some of us men are vulnerable to criticism from women because
Right.
we grew up with it. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Seeing a man at his best and calling him to that without the shame or the
Uh-huh.
criticizing.
Uh-huh.
Wow. So we have a few minutes left. Is there anything else you want me to ask you or you want to share?
Well, the thought that just came up is that I've been working on a TED talk
Mm,
that it's interesting to me that originally I was thinking it was definitely for men, and now I'm really seeing that in some ways it's for men and women and all genders, but specifically, around that piece around men and women, and this idea that there's a missing piece of how women actually can support men's healing.
mm,
And because I'm seeing a lot of organizations, Mankind Project and Everyman, and seeing a lot of organizations where men are supporting men, which is beautiful. I love it. I want more of that. But
yeah.
I don't necessarily feel like women totally know their role, and some women have been so hurt or harmed, with
Mm-hmm.
certain acts that men have done that they can't actually step forward and say, I love you, I forgive you, but for those of us who can, um, I want, I want more of that. I want more of women supporting men and seeing and understanding men. And so then when I think about it from the men's side, one of the things that I've seen that's been really amazing is that as I work with men to be clear about what they want and need and let go of the shame around it,
Mm,
they can then
yeah.
communicate it. And if they get attacked or they get blamed or they get criticized, they can stand in the face of that and just be like, wow, I don't deserve to be treated that way. Or they don't have to attack back, but they can say,
Yeah.
here's what I need from you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I want that for all men too. I want the releasing of shame and blame
Mm,
within yourself to
mm,
then be able
right.
to stand strong in your truth and your desires and your needs, and then be able to communicate that so that you can really co-create something beautiful.
That's awesome. I mean, I love that. I actually can resonate with that deep in myself. And it's
Mm,
like, yes, I don't always have to be around women that have to be perfectly anti-critical.
right.
And what degree does it just mirror something inside me?
Mm-hmm.
And something you said earlier about you, there's just this deep knowing in you that every man has a tender heart. I
Yeah.
love that knowingness in you. And I can just imagine how that gives you the clarity to just touch any man and impact them with love.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. That I don't have to navigate through the layers. We can just go there. And
Mhm.
that to me is, I think it's one of the strongest things possible, right? To feel that tenderness, to allow that tenderness, to me is a sign of incredible strength.
Yeah. And I think, Shayna, you modeled that tenderness. As I said earlier, I hear it in your voice. I hear it in your whole presence and your style and the way you firmly and gently, work with any of us that you've worked with. It's
Thank
just
you.
a natural gift that's like you said earlier, being held and comforted with what's possible.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's interesting. I feel the call to kind of end this episode by saying, for you listening, if there's any way I can support you, please let me know. And if there's any way that you see that I could fit into the vision around the culture change for men or even young boys, I've been thinking more about boys and teenagers and how to reach men and boys sooner so that
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a repair, right? It's actually
Right.
setting them up for success. So, right, if there's any way that you see that I could support that, also let me know. And you can email me at support@shanajamescoaching.com. And yeah, I'm always here to support and to hear your ideas for new podcasts. And I'm excited actually to start bringing more episodes with some deeper and more personal stories of men's journeys to really show what's possible. And what your life can be like.
Mm. And I can imagine having a son is also a reflection of watching him grow.
Yeah.
Of working with younger men and boys.
Yes, I want that too.
Mm.
So thank you for doing this, and thank you for allowing me to share my heart, and thank you for you listening.
Thank you, Shayna, for being the beautiful light you are in the world.
Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.